Welcome, dear listeners and viewers of our podcast on coaching, broadcasted from Vilnius and Brisbane, Australia. My name is Alisa, and I am ICC trainer in the Baltic States, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. And I'm very happy to introduce Josephu O'Connoru, who most probably I do not need to introduce him because he is a co-founder of international coaching community, recognized author, trainer, executive coach, and consultant. And Joseph is an author of 18 books on coaching, NLP, training, sales, communication, skills management, and systemic thinking. We have been colleagues with Joseph for 9 years, and I'm very happy that we will have a fruitful conversation today. So let me start, Joseph, from the first question, and that is the question most probably you hear very often. It is how you found yourself in coaching.
Well, okay. Well, many thanks for that. It's good to be here. Nice to talk with you. When you ask a question like that, I get an explosion in my head of many different sorts of answers. So let me kind of give you, at least start with a historical answer. So for many years, I was a musician, a professional musician, and I played classical guitar. And I taught many people to play guitar, classical guitar. And many of them were very good. They were concert players. And what I used to do is I used to get them to sit down in the studio, get out the guitar, told them to practice a little bit. And then I would go off, make an excuse, get a glass of water for them or make some tea or something. But I would listen at the door and I would hear them play. And this was a way that I could hear them play at their best. So I knew what they were capable of. Because they didn't think they were being listened to. They were just having fun. They were playing it very well. Now I walk into the room, I'm the teacher, and I sit down and, say, okay, play your piece. And usually 90% of the time, their capability would drop at least 30–40%. So something was getting in the way. It wasn't their ability. Their ability to play the guitar hadn't changed, not in the 10 seconds it took for me to walk into the room. I didn't try and intimidate them or frighten them, but there was something, some kind of self-consciousness, some kind of idea, some kind of mental model, some kind of self-one or self-two, as Timothy Galloway says, that was getting in the way. And of course, when you're talking about playing guitar or playing an instrument to people in public, it's very sensitive to that. And if you're not at your best, then you will make mistakes and it's not going to go so well. So my job with the best guitarists was not to teach them to play the guitar. They already knew how to do that. But to be able to play at their best when the situation demanded it, which was in a concert. And the lesson, the guitar lesson, was a kind of preparation for that concert. So I didn't really think about coaching then, because this was years before I became an official coach, but I was doing coaching because I was dealing with people's ideas about themselves, about me, about what they could do, and helping them to resolve that in order to give their best. And I think that as an executive coach now, exactly the same dynamic applies. You get executives who are very capable, but they know they can be more capable. And my job is to help them to clear away those obstructions that are stopping them from being the most capable. And unlike being a guitar teacher, I don't have to be an executive in their business. So I can help them much more content-free. They are the experts at their own business. So, from that, and also from the fact of, as a teacher, I always tried to teach people in the way that they learned the best, instead of in the way that I wanted to teach. And trying to discover that was also an interesting challenge. And I think both of these come into coaching. So there's for me, there's a line between my teaching of guitar, my playing of guitar, right through to coaching, which took me also through NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which gave me some tools to help me do that. But that's really where it came from, I think.
So once you understood that people play guitar better when there are no viewers, what was your next step? Did you run to a bookstore to buy a book on NLP or teaching people, and what did you do differently afterwards? What was? Do you give any advice to people, or what was that?
No, I didn't. I mean, I didn't give them advice. Although again, I didn't kind of think about coaching. Teachers don't give advice as such. You say people play best on their own. Yeah, usually. But if you're going to be professional, then you want to actually play best for other people.
Right.
And my father was an actor, mostly theatre actor, and in terms of performance anxiety, he knew a lot about performance anxiety. So the point is, anybody can perform when there's nobody there, but the really good performers are the people who the audience brings out the best in them. So what I used to do with my students, I used to do many things. I used to deliberately distract them. So I would say, okay, play this piece. I'm going to walk around the room. I'm going to make funny faces at you. I'm going to suddenly shout at you, I'm going to play the radio. I might turn the radio on or something. So they got to deal with the sorts of distractions, much worse distractions, than they would have to deal with in a concert. So what I did, I suppose, really was to get them to practice their deletion. In other words, to be able to screen out the distractions and just focus on the music, on the beauty of the music. So I did many things. I taught a lot in schools, and I had a reputation as a very, very strange guitar teacher, because I used to get people to, when people made a mistake, I used to tell them to repeat the mistake deliberately, which was very interesting, because if you make a mistake, it's very hard to deliberately make the same mistake, because the whole point about a mistake is that you don't want to do it. It's a slip. The moment you can make a mistake deliberately, you have control of it. And once you have control of it, you have choice about it. And once you have choice about it, you can choose whether to make it or not. So this was great fun for my students, mostly, because I would just tell them to make the mistake again, make a bigger mistake or something. So that was another thing. But so I would do a lot of these different sorts of things. And with regard to a book, my first book was actually on teaching music, teaching the guitar. It was called Not Pulling Strings. And it was still is only the book that I know of on NLP and music. So, the book wasn't there, so I wrote it.
Right. Well, it's an interesting idea about deliberately repeating the mistake. I'll apply that in coaching training when we have task with the ball. That would be...
Yeah, be careful.
Okay, let's continue about coaching. Thanks to coaching, people's dreams become true. How would you explain the magic of coaching? How does it happen?
I think I kind of think about that a bit differently. I think about the magic of people and how they are not able to give that magic. And any magic that coaching has is borrowed from the client. So when clients get wonderful results, it's the client's results. It's them that do it. Coach doesn't do it. If you're looking for a profession to be in the spotlight and be famous, then coaching is definitely not the one for you, because all the good performances will come from your clients. So The magic of coaching as such, I think, is for the coach to be able to stand aside and to allow to be very resourceful in terms of tricking or allowing or encouraging or motivating or any kind of way for the client to be able to work their own magic.
And you work on coaching and write about it a lot. And where is coaching in your personal life? How do you apply it in your personal life on a daily basis?
I mean, I've had my own coach. I don't have a coach at the moment. I think that if you do a lot of coaching and have been coached, then you can internalize a lot of the kinds of questions that a good coach will ask you. So in that sense, you know, I'm asking myself, I think, some challenging questions about the sorts of decisions that I'm making and what I do and everything else. So in that sense, the coaching is alive and well in my life. On the other hand, I think self-coaching is very much second best to having an external coach, because in the same way that you can't tickle yourself, because you can always predict what your hands are going to do. So you can never surprise yourself. Whereas if other people tickle you, you can't predict what they're going to do. Therefore, you have this, you know, this reaction. So I like that analogy, which kind of comes from neuroscience in a way. You can't tickle yourself in the same way that you can't really coach yourself, because one of the whole points of coaching is to have somebody else with a completely different mind and different experiences who can ask you a question you would never possibly think of. And that's the whole thing. That's also the magic of coaching, to get something that you can't think of simply because you are yourself. And however wonderful you are and however resourceful you are, there'll always be something that you're missing. And that's the job of the coach, to find out what's missing and supply it. So that's why, as a coach, you know, they say coaches should listen to what the client says. Yes, they should, but they should also listen to what the client doesn't say. What don't they say? But what are the gaps? What's the silence? It's like music. You listen to the notes, but the notes don't mean anything unless they're embedded in silence. So you've got to listen to both, what's said and what isn't said, and what should be said and what needs to be said.
What is your favorite coaching question?
Oh, I don't have any favorite coaching questions, because I think coaching questions are very contextual. In other words, they are drawn out. I think the best coaching questions are drawn out by the situation. I think that coaching is a co-creation between the coach and the client. So, you know, you're always coaching a person, and therefore the way that the questions will come out and what questions you ask is going to be really quite personal and contextual to that particular client. So I can't really answer that one.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you are asking yourself challenging coaching questions. Can you share one of them?
Yeah, well, one of my favorite questions to ask myself, and I ask other people as well, is supposing they want to do something, you know, they have a goal or whatever it might be, and there's a lot of difficulties or possibilities or decisions and choices and obstructions and everything else. So there's two kind of questions that I would ask. The first is, without thinking, what are you emotionally drawn to? What draws you emotionally? Never mind the rational mind. The rational mind will jump in and go, oh no, it's impossible. Oh. So you've got to bypass that for a start. A good way of doing that is using the trick of the money, you know. You say, if you've got a choice to make, then you get a coin and you decide in advance, you know, if it comes up heads, you're going to do one thing, and if it comes up tails, you're going to do the other, and you decide in advance. You flip the coin, you let it fall, you see what the coin comes up, and you don't try to stop what the emotional reaction is. So if heads comes up means you're going to do it, and you see heads, and you get this rush of, oh yeah, or you see heads and you go, oh, can we do the best of three? It's going to tell you something emotionally. Now, that's not to say you should go and do it on the toss of a coin. But then the question to follow up is, what would have to be true for you to be able to do this in the way that works best for you? So it's a little bit like the so-called miracle question. You know, imagine tomorrow you wake up and wave a magic wand and everything's worked out exactly right. Describe your life. So this is a kind of another take on that sort of miracle question. What would have to be true for this to work out in this way that you want? So then what people have to do then, they basically have to do an action plan. Well, this would have to be true, and 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 they're not. Okay, well, let's take those things one at a time. So what would you have to do in order to resolve this particular one? And so on. And although it sounds rather perhaps abstract, you can very soon get to a 3 or 4 point action plan of these things have to happen, and these are the steps I'm going to do to make them happen.
You travel all around the world, and now you are in Australia, and mostly, of course, you travel now with the idea of coaching, mostly teaching people. Do you observe any cultural differences in how people apply coaching, or it is a universal tool and there are no cultural differences, whether you are in Asia, in Australia, in Europe, or America?
I think the basic coaching approach of of empathy, of asking questions, of getting client commitment, of helping people with their what they want, their goals, exploring their values, finding out what the mental models are that are obstructing them. This is the same, I think, the world over. So the process, it's a bit like, football maybe. The game of football, the rules are pretty much the same all over the world, but the way that it's played is very different. And if you get a player from England and you put them in a Brazilian team, they're going to struggle. They've got to learn to play football the Brazilian way. Otherwise, they're going to trip over their own feet, or they're going to not pass the ball when they should, or all of those sort of things. So there are certainly cultural differences in terms of how the process works, and the best way to be sensitive about that. As a coach, and these can be very important, because you can be an extremely skilled coach in one culture, but not work very well in another culture if you don't show cultural respect or empathy. Well, I mean, for example, I'm English. When I went to Brazil and lived in Brazil as a coach, first of all, I came over as rather kind of cold, the cold English person. Now, I'm not cold, but in terms of demonstrating emotion, I don't demonstrate emotion openly in the way that Brazilians do. So I had to learn that kind of emotional intelligence to be able to make that connection. And in the same way, if I'm coaching, for example, a Japanese person, they don't give out their emotions in the same way that an English person would. So I have to be very aware of that emotional dynamic. So I think certainly your effectiveness as a coach is going to depend on your cultural sensitivity, but the basic process, I think, is the same.
I remember ICC Coaching Congress in Lima, which started from dancing and singing.
It's a good way to start any congress, yes.
Speaking about cultural differences, do you see any values that unites all the people and values which separate people?
I'm not sure what you mean. Can you say a bit more about that?
I mean, is there anything that is common to all the people? Some values or ideas or dreams? And is there anything that is really different in different cultures and you would never expect to see such big differences?
Well, you know, all over the world and every culture, it's human beings, and human beings have certain needs and wants and development. So, you know, if you're human, then you're going to have something in common, and you're going to have values in common. Now, how those values are defined and how they're expressed is something else. For example, you could say everybody wants to be happy. Yeah, happiness, value. Right? I don't think anyone would argue with the fact. You want to be happy? No one's going to say no. So, but then what makes you happy? How do you define happiness? What's happiness for you? For one person, it might be lying on a beach with a cold beer. For another person, it might be skiing down a mountain at -15. For another person, it might be curling up on a sofa and reading a book. You know? So they all want to be happy. But if you try to enforce your idea of happiness on someone else, they're not going to be happy. So this is why you've always got to be very careful in coaching when people give you values about respect or honesty or happiness or freedom or love or whatever it might be. You may think you know what they mean. You don't. You have no idea what they mean. These are great, big, fluffy words like big balloons bouncing around. You've really got to get hold of them and understand what they mean to the person. And then you can start to find out what they could do in order for that particular value to be realized. And, you know, in the same way about respect, people show respect to others in different ways. So if I show respect to someone in Brazil, and I try and show the same, if I try and show the same sort of respect to someone in Japan, it's not going to work. So those behavioral criteria, you know, what is the behavior that expresses this particular value? Then that's also going to change. So when you're talking about human values, of what motivates people, what they want, you first of all got to really dig down into what do they mean, usually with some very clear and concrete example, which is why one of my favorite questions is, can you give me an example, please, of what you mean? Secondly, then, you know, how is this expressed? And thirdly, what do you need from other people for this to work?
Well, I imagine a person saying that he or she doesn't want to be happy because happiness doesn't last long. And sometimes that is an answer.
Well, I mean, then you could say, well, then you'd rather not be happy at all. I mean, the very reason that they don't want to be happy is because happy is so nice. Being happy is so nice. You know, the logic is weird there, isn't it? I don't want to be happy because I don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
Immediately you're saying it's very valuable. Well, if it's very valuable, how about having a go at not losing it, or not losing it quite as much as you have? Or maybe redefining it in such a way that it's not immediately lost, because many people will define happiness as something that they can never have, or that they are bound to lose, you know? So some people shoot themselves in the foot with regard to their definitions of values.
The question people often ask is, does anyone can become a coach? What would be your answer to this question?
Why not? I'm a believer generally in saying yes first and then seeing if there's any reason why there is a no, rather than saying no first and then trying to find a way around it. So yeah, why not? You know, what would disqualify a person from being a coach? Of course, they would need to be concerned about other people. They would want to help other people. They would want to have some rapport and empathy. They would want to be disciplined in terms of what questions to ask, and training is very useful in that respect. And then, yeah, and because, you know, remember coaching is funny. It's like being a teacher, you know. He's a good teacher. Why is he a good teacher? Well, his students do so well. Well, okay, that's certainly something, but it's to be defined by how your students do or how your clients do is very interesting. It always reminds me of what Marshall Goldsmith says. Marshall Goldsmith, the American coach, he's a great coach, he's a great guy, and really good writer on coaching as well. And when people ask him, you know, how do you get such good results with your clients? He says, I choose my clients very carefully. Because after all, it's them that has to do the work. And it kind of sounds funny, but there's a serious aspect to that. Because in terms of coaching, you need well, three things really. What is one way of looking at it? You need a model. You need some kind of model of coaching that you can apply, not slavishly, but some kind of structure. Let's call it a structure. You need skills of a coach, but you need client commitment. You cannot coach without client commitment. So I've never had this, but if I did, if you know, a company approached me and said, you know, we have an executive that we'd like you to coach, and the executive doesn't want to be coached, then I'm not going to take them on. But I will take the time to explain to them what coaching is, because if someone says, I don't want to be coached, they may have a very strange idea about what coaching is. A lot of people will think it's a kind of therapy or consultancy or something like that. I'll tell you a funny story. From many years ago, I was employed by a very large company to coach a number of, they call them leaders of the future. So these were mid-range executives who were being fast-tracked to become top executives. And it was an international company, so they were all over the world. And I was living in London, and I was flown to Geneva in Switzerland because one of these leaders of the future was in Geneva. So I was there, you know, waiting in the meeting room, ready for my first session with this executive, and she walked in and she had this big pile of papers in her hand, and she went, "Oh, you're the coach they've sent." I said, "Yeah, hi, I'm Joseph." She said, "Hi, I'm really busy, so I'll give you 10 minutes to convince me that coaching is any good for you, any good for me, you know, that coaching can help me. I'll give you 10 minutes to convince me that coaching can help me. Otherwise, you know, I'm really busy. I really haven't got the time." I think that was it's a very nice challenge. And I think there's three possible replies to that, two of which don't work. The first one that doesn't work is to say how good coaching is. You know, coaching is a wonderful methodology. Coaching does this, coaching does that, coaching. People aren't interested in coaching. They're interested in solutions to their problems. That's all they're interested in. So I didn't do that. The other thing that doesn't work is to tell them what a brilliant coach you are. "Oh, I've coached lots of executives. Oh, here's all my references. Oh, you know, I'm wonderful. Look, all these executives I coach, and they all say I'm great." That doesn't work either. People aren't interested in that. So what I did was I said to her, I pointed to the pile of papers, and I said, "Oh, looks like you are very busy." She said, "Yeah, you bet." So I said, "Well, what's the most difficult thing in that big pile?" So she brought out a sheet of paper and said, "I've got this meeting this afternoon and blah, 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 and this is really difficult for me." So we sat down and we started talking about this meeting that was coming up. And it was about an hour and a half later. She said, that was really helpful. Was that coaching?" I said, "Well, maybe. If it was helpful, then that's fine." And then she wanted to go to lunch and talk a bit more about it. So, you know, that's what people want. That's what, when you say, "Do you want to coach or something?" That's what people want. They want someone to listen to their problem and help them with it. And they don't care about whether it's coaching or anything else, really, whatever label you put on it. If you're there for them, that is going to work for them.
Imagine a situation when there's a person who has no education, he or she does almost nothing in his or her life. There's no results behind his or her shoulders, and he or she wants to become a coach. People usually they do not trust such coach who has no results behind his or her back, because people want to see some credibility. So what would you say in this situation about anyone can become a coach?
Well, it's a different question, isn't it? Can anyone become a coach is about the person. What I understand you're asking something now about a coach has had training and wants to get work, because a coach is not a coach without a client. So how do you get clients if you don't have any clients that you can demonstrate results with? It's exactly the same dynamic, when I'm thinking back to my father in acting, all these actors, and it's really difficult, very, very, it's much harder to get a job in acting than it is to get a job as a coach, I'll tell you. So, you'd apply for all these jobs as an actor, and they'll go, well, what have you done? And now the actors will go, well, I've just come out of drama school, I haven't done anything yet. So what can you say? You haven't done anything yet. But in the way that you talk about it and the way of what you say, maybe people will take you on. And I think it's the same with coaching. So if you want to be a coach and you're interested in people, then you're going to communicate that. And this will make you attractive for people.
Thank you for your answer. Let's move to coaching development. And you've been in coaching for almost 20 years or even more. So do you see changes in doctrine of coaching? How has it developed during past 20 years?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer, because coaching is hard to pin down. I wrote a book about 10 years ago now, what is coaching? And basically took the 6 main models of coaching at the time, which was integral coaching, behavioral coaching, what was it? The art of the tennis, Timothy Galloway, and the the art of tennis. What was Timothy Galloway's book?
In a game of tennis?
Inner game, yeah, the inner game coaching. So integral, behavioral, inner game, NLP, ontological. There was one more. Can't remember. Maybe there's only 5. But there are different approaches, and some of them are quite different. The difference between ontological coaching and NLP coaching. Well, no, ontological coaching, say, and integral coaching. So you've got a certain structure of knowledge and worldview that's different behind those two, although I would still argue that the process that you apply is going to be the same. And the book is about basically, what do all these things have in common? They have different names. People train for them in different ways. They seem to have different sorts of approaches, but actually, really, it's all pretty much, it is pretty much the same sort of thing. What do they have in common rather than what's different? For something to be different from something else, they must have a point of commonality. Otherwise, how could you judge difference? Anything that's different from something else is also has something in common with it. So you've just got to find out what that is. Hold on, just to backtrack on your question. How has coaching changed and developed? I think that a lot of people have brought in different lenses into coaching, insofar as how you look at things. And one lens I'm particularly interested in at the moment, as you probably know, is the neuroscience one. Political coaching, economic coaching, neuroscience coaching. there's all sorts of different lenses, different ways that you can look at a particular issue and apply a coaching methodology to it. So I think it's more about coaching diversifying and being bringing in other disciplines and being able to take the best of those and fill in some of the gaps, perhaps, that coaching has, because all disciplines do have gaps, so that you can get a better model, really. And that's, I've always been interested in that, and that's why I got into neuroscience coaching, because it seemed 5 years ago that neuroscience was one particular way of lens looking at people that was hardly represented in coaching at all. It was all psychological, it was all subjective. So about time we brought in some ideas about how actually the brain does work, as opposed to how we hope it might work.
Most probably thanks to neuroscience, coaching became more precise.
I think so. I think neuroscience can add a lot to coaching. Otherwise, I wouldn't have studied it and written a book about it. At the same time, it's not the only model. It's not like suddenly you do, neuroscience, and that's it. You'd forget about everything else. But it's like having. I like the metaphor of a lens or glasses. Somebody comes with a particular issue and you go, how does it look like through these glasses? Okay, interesting. How does it look through these glasses? Neuroscience glasses. Okay. Executive glasses, team coaching glasses, psychological glasses, psychoanalytic glasses, whatever it might be. And some glasses don't really help you very much at all. And other glasses you go, wow, okay, that's interesting, and helps you a lot. But the more glasses you have, I think the more chance you have of getting things into focus and resolving the issue, because the problems people have are very diverse.
Yes, good that you can change glasses and none are stuck to your face.
Yeah, otherwise you put on one pair of glasses and go, oh, well, you look like this, I'm gonna do this to you. And that's it, you're stuck. It's not about them. It's about the glasses that you're wearing, not about the other person.
You have read hundreds of articles on neuroscience, I guess. And was there anything that sincerely surprised you about neuroscience and about human brain operation?
Well, there's a lot of surprising things about neuroscience, about how our environment affects us unconsciously, and the sorts of pressures, the sorts of decisions that we tend to make without thinking that are really not very good at all. We tend to be very habitual thinkers, and we tend to resist hard thinking. So one thing that certainly neuroscience taught me was not exactly distrust, but if somebody has a very quick answer, then let's go for another one. And another one. Let's have your best thinking about this, because the quick answer is the habitual thinking. The quick answer is the neuroplasticity wired the brain that's, boom, boom, there it is. And that is exactly the thinking that has got the person into the situation that they're in now, that they don't want to be in. So you have to get them out of that habitual thinking, because the habitual thinking has got them into that. And they, as Einstein said, you can't solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created the problem. You're just stuck there. So that's one thing that neuroscience does. There's many different things. One thing certainly, there's three things really that if I would summarize from neuroscience, and they're not rocket science, and most people will say, oh, I know that, that's not surprising, but they won't do anything about it. That's the trouble. The first one is exercise, physical exercise, really, really good for the brain. Physical exercise is, most of the time, has better clinical results for depression than drugs. The brain needs physical exercise. The brain is part of your body. So, you know, sitting on a chair thinking is not, although it's kind of an archetype of people who are clever, I don't think that's right. You need to physically exercise for your physical and mental health. So that's the first thing. And there's stacks of research about that. Second thing there's stacks of research about is sleep. That's becoming more and more into mainstream now. Sleep is really, really important. When I started reading about how important sleep was to the brain, it completely changed my sleeping habits. It's so important. It's interesting. The one thing surprising, maybe little fact. You know, in England, I don't know if you do in your country, we have the clocks going back and going forward. So the clocks go, they go forward, I think, at the beginning of March, something like that, and they go back at the end of
same in Lithuania.
October. Yes. Yeah, okay. So basically, in the beginning of the year, around March, you get 1 hour's less sleep. You lose an hour's sleep, right? 1 hour. And now it's really interesting on that day when everybody's lost an hour's sleep, the level of road traffic accidents has a sudden spike. There are many, many more road traffic accidents on that day than there are on any other day. Equally, on that day, you don't want to come before a magistrate in order to be sentenced or fined, because the sentences and fines on that day after the magistrate's got 1 hour less sleep is far worse than on any other day. So then this is just 1 hour, and people just shrug it off. But even the lack of 1 hour's sleep can have, when you look at big data, you know, I'm not saying that it's going to affect everybody in the same way, but if you look at big data, there is a significant effect. And it's very well researched that sleeping habits are so important, the quality and the quantity of sleep you get. And I've had too many executives, you know, say something to me like, you know, oh yeah, I do 4 hours sleep a night and I'm really busy and I can't really afford to sleep anymore. I've got so much to do. And I go, well, you're just handicapping yourself. By taking 4 hours sleep, you're guaranteeing that your work is going to be substandard for the 20 hours that you're awake. You need more sleep than that. So they get into a vicious circle whereby they're not very productive in the hours that they're working because they haven't had enough sleep. So then they try to make that up by cutting down on sleep. That's just, you know, running fast to stay in the same place. So the sleep aspect is very important. Another thing executives say is, you know, multitasking. They think they can multitask. Most people think they can multitask. No, you can't. Brain doesn't multitask. It does one thing at a time, and it switches very, very quickly between them. So when people think they can multitask, what they're actually doing is switching very quickly between a number of different things, and they're ending up doing all of them worse than if they concentrated on one. So that's another thing that executives like to think they're good at. I just make a joke about it. I say that, well, you know, multitasking is against the law sometimes. And they go, what? I go, well, if you're on your mobile phone while you're driving, it's no good if a policeman stops you and you say, it's all right, officer, I'm an executive, I can multitask. You're not going to get away with that, you know. You cannot multitask while you're driving. Anyway, but the third thing is meditation. And again, there's cast iron research about this, that meditation is really, really good for your mental life. It brings down anxiety, it helps you focus, it helps with neuroplasticity, it stops rumination and obsessive thinking. It's a really, really important practice. And many people don't do it because they don't know what it is. It's really simple. You can't fail at it. Or they think there's hundreds of different types and they can't really pick one. Or they think that 5 minutes, you know, they can only do it for 5 minutes a day and that's not worth it. So they better not do it at all. It's a bit like saying, you know, I'm not going to be happy because I can only be happy for a few minutes. and then I'll have to give it up. And so this is a practice that I encourage everybody to do, whether it's coaches or clients. So those would be the three main learnings from neuroscience and coaching. And as I say, they're not rocket science, and most people will nod and go, yeah, absolutely. And they won't do anything about it. So they don't really understand what's going on. And that's okay. It is what it is.
Continuing about neuroscience and still coming to an end with our interview, final question. One is antidote to dopamine and constant hunger is gratitude. So it's a personal question. What are you grateful for in your life in 2023?
I'm grateful for many things. I think it's very important to be grateful for specific things right now. Otherwise, it gets very generalized. And also, you know what we're all like. We take things for granted. So something that's really wonderful on Monday is just normal on Friday. And then you're not grateful for it anymore. You know, on Monday, it's like, oh, fantastic. You know, oh, I got this new computer. It's amazing. I'm really grateful for that. On Friday, it's like, oh, this computer, it's so blooming slow. I wish it would go a bit faster. So I think it's important to be very grateful. I think it's important to be grateful for very specific things every day. So, you know, I'm grateful for this glass of cold water because it's really, really humid here. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this room. I'm grateful for someone who was willing to teach me Japanese this evening and spend 50 minutes of their time helping me to speak Japanese, which is really terrible for me. So
that was healthy for your brain.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think so. Learning a new language is certainly one of the ways that you can stimulate your brain, but it's not necessarily very pleasant. It is it is in one way, but at the same time, it's hard work. And like I said, we don't like hard work if we can avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm speaking for myself.
Can you share some of your dreams, goals, or expectations in New Year 2024? What do you plan for yourself?
Well, I'm kind of on a sabbatical at the moment. I'm very looking forward to spending 2 or 3 months in New Zealand, traveling around, which will be wonderful. I love New Zealand, and then 2 or 3 months in Japan. Hence, trying to learn some Japanese, and I love Japan as well. So I'm really looking forward to those experiences, and I don't know what they will bring. All sorts of things, and that's fine.
Would you like to wish something to our listeners and viewers for New Year?
Well, have a wonderful New Year. Learn a lot. Do things that make you happy and other people happy, and learn to say no. Because one thing that stops an awful lot of people, at least that I've talked to, being happy, is that they don't say no to things. And I was certainly like that. It's like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, yeah. This is interesting. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'd love to do that. Oh, okay, I'll do, yeah. And then before you know it, there's so many things going on. They're all really great and really interesting. And you can't do them all. So one thing I've learned, and I would wish this for everyone, because I think that it helps a lot, is to be really clear about what you say yes to. And if you say yes, mean it. Not like, oh yeah, sure, if I can. Oh yeah, sure, if I got time. And go for it, and pick things that really make you happy and motivate you, and you'll have a great time. And there'll be a load of things that you would like to do and you won't be able to do. And that's fine. That's okay. There was some politician that that have answer to three. Well, if somebody asked them to do something, they would have three answers. It would either be no, sadly, no, and yes.
I was planning to ask you, will you come to Lithuania? But maybe I will ask this question next time.
I'd be delighted to come to Lithuania, but I have New Zealand and Japan first.
Right. So thank you, Joseph, and I say thank you to our listeners and viewers, and we wish you a happy new year and see you soon.
Yeah, happy new year. Thank you very much. All the
Bye.
best.